friends, and welcome to the Happy Hour with Jamie Ivey podcast. I'm your host, Jamie, and I am so excited that you're with us today. Every week, I invite a girlfriend to join me on the show, and we chat about the big things in life, the little things in life, and everything in between. Guys, today's show is brought to you by a new sponsor, and one we're very excited to welcome to the Happy Hour, and that is Audible. They've even given me my very own show link, audible.com/Jamie Ivey. So check out that link and get a free 30-day trial on any audiobook that you want. Guys, you are listening to episode number 74, and today's guest is Danielle Walker. Danielle is an author of 2 New York Times bestselling cookbooks, Against All Grain and Meals Made Simple, and she's the voice behind the most popular grain-free blog on the internet, againstallgrain.com. After being diagnosed with an autoimmune disease and suffering for many years, Danielle healed herself through her dietary changes. I was so excited today to talk to Danielle about how she possibly gets her son to eat such a healthy diet. Hello. Plus, I wanted to ask her about the story of losing her daughter a few years ago. You're going to really love our conversation. It's very interesting about food. And then I was very honored to be able to sit and listen to her talk about her daughter the way that she did. And I know that you're going to enjoy it as well. Guys, here is my conversation with Danielle Walker. Hi, Danielle.
Hi, Jamie. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good.
Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
In your busy day.
Yeah. It's not, well, yeah, today's busy. I was going to say it's not too busy, but it is.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you're here. We met at IF,
yeah.
Yes, I remember backstage. I don't know if you remember it. I didn't want to be presumptuous or anything, but we met back there. And I have just been loving following you ever since then on all your social media platforms.
Thanks.
Your new little baby and all of that.
Yeah, he's pretty sweet.
So a 4-month-old.
Yeah, he's almost 5 actually. He'll be 5 months on the 28th.
Okay, so how has it been with the new baby?
It's actually been great. He's really easy, which is awesome. My first was not as easy. So
in which way?
He just didn't
sleeping?
Sleep well. Yeah. Sleeping. He had stomach stuff. I feel like that was probably due to what I was eating, and I wised up a bit for this one. So I think all around it's just been a little bit easier of an experience.
That's so wonderful.
Yeah. How many do you have?
I have 4.
Okay. See, I can't complain about 2. I'm all of the mamas that do it with 4 are amazing.
But you can though, because I complained with 2. I mean, that's what I always say. Sometimes I find myself getting a little oh, they don't know what they're doing because they only have 2 kids. And then I remember I had 2 kids and it was hard.
Yeah. I think it's hard. Everybody says it's hardest to go from 1 to 2, and then the rest after that is just a breeze.
Hardest for me was 2 to 3 actually.
Oh, okay.
But my 3 was a little abnormal because we brought our daughter home from Haiti and she was 22 months old.
Okay,
so I went from 2 to then here's a 2-year-old.
Right. Yes. And that's a hard stage as it is.
So I think that added to my transitional hardness. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So my oldest just turned 12.
Oh.
And I literally, I was holding him yesterday, not holding him like a baby, but I was hugging him. And I said, I can't believe I have a 12-year-old. I just don't even understand how that happened, that I have a 12-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's crazy. I know. I can't even think about that. I was talking to my son, Asher, who is 5, yesterday about, we were talking about driving. And he said he wanted to just take Easton, which is my little guy, out by himself. And I was like, well, who's going to drive you guys? And he's like, well, I will. And I was like, well, you won't be able to right away. But, when you're 16, he'll be 11. And I was like, wow, that's crazy to even think that far. Yeah, that far in advance.
Yeah, my girlfriend, her little boy was celebrating his 5th birthday or something this recently. And I was like, man, in 5 years, my son's going to be getting out of high school.
Yeah.
We have a couple more, but it's just crazy.
Yeah.
But so wonderful. So you are an author, a cookbook author. Did you ever in your wildest dreams imagine that your life would be this way?
No, not in the least bit. I thought that I would just be a stay-at-home mom, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But have you always loved cooking? That's my thing. That's my question. Or did it come out of necessity?
It came mostly out of necessity. I mean, I cooked. Yeah, I definitely cooked. My grandmother was a huge, she still is, she's still alive, cooked for so many people in my family and just always had big gatherings. And so she's Italian, that side of the family. So I definitely learned from that. And then my other grandmother was German. And so she cooked and my mom got some of that. So yeah, I grew up cooking, but not much more than kind of some standard simple recipes, or casseroles and things like that. And I started kind of loving it in college, like watching cooking shows and
Mm-hmm.
reading some of the magazines and things, but never to the point of creating my own recipes or spending sometimes 8 hours a day in the kitchen, which is what I do now.
Which
Um,
let me just tell you right here, you people that can create your own recipes, literally, like I put you up with like artists that create the most beautiful masterpieces because it's so foreign to me. Like my husband, just the other day, you're gonna think this is hilarious because I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna make a roast," and he goes, "Okay," and I was like, "I don't have a recipe." He's like, "Well, just put a bunch of, just put a bunch of stuff in there." I'm like, "Well, how much?" And he's like, "I don't know, just put a bunch." And he can do that. He'll just
Yeah.
come in and he'll look in the fridge, and I'll be like, we're dying. We have no food. We have to go out to eat. And then he presents this beautiful meal that I just don't know how y'all do it.
Yeah, it is a creative side. I think I consider myself a creative, just like you said, like an artist. So it takes a lot of practice. I think there were quite a few things when I first started that were fairly inedible that I had this like great idea, in my head that just didn't really play out as well as I thought. And we ate it all still. And I started so many dinners with like, I'm so sorry, but you're eating this because it's expensive and I'm not throwing it away.
And that's what I made. So there you
Yeah.
go.
Yep. And that's it. And we don't have time to do anything else. But it's definitely been a process. But yeah, it really was out of necessity. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease when I was 22. And I did a bunch of the medications and, all sorts of things, and it wasn't working. And I looked and found that diet could help. And so really it was that I didn't want to feel deprived and eat a bunch of bland food for the rest of my life. And so it kind of was the catalyst of getting me into the kitchen and creating things that were every bit as good as the food that I had to give up. And so that's really where the love came from. And then it continued to be fueled by, knowing that my recipes were helping hundreds of thousands of people, and that without them, those recipes, those people might feel deprived, and I didn't want anybody to feel deprived. And so that's kind of where the love of cooking has come from.
Okay. So you were diagnosed when you were 22.
Mm-hmm.
And without me blatantly asking you how old you are, how long ago
Yeah.
was that?
I am 30. I've got
Okay. So
2
8 years
weeks
ago.
left of being 30. So I'll hold on to that.
Which was 30 a big deal for you, by the way?
No, not at all.
It wasn't for me either.
I'm kind of an old soul, to be honest. And so even in college, my friends were like in their 30s already. And my husband and I just have always kind of had older friends. So I've always kind of wanted to be 30. Like I feel like when I was 16, I was like, I can't wait till I'm just 30 and I'm out
So
of high
funny.
school. And yeah, so no, it was not a big deal at all for me, honestly.
You know what was a bigger deal for me, Danielle, than 30? Was
Yeah.
36.
Oh, because it's like you're past
Because you're
that.
past it. It's like
Yeah.
you're no
Hmm.
longer like, oh, I'm like this young, hip, mid-30 mom. Now I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm 2.5 years away from 40. And I don't
Right.
care. I don't care. Like, it doesn't bother me, but it just
Yeah.
has a different tone. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know what it was.
No, yeah, 30, yeah, I was newly pregnant with my son when I turned 30, like a month pregnant or 2 months or however long it was. And there's just a lot going on with my business and my family and home life. And so it was kind of an exciting year, actually. It was like a turning of a page for me that I was excited about. I was ready to kind of leave my 20s in the past because my 20s were kind of difficult. So I was excited. I'm like 30 means it's a new,
It's
a new
it's
decade.
a
We're
whole new
gonna,
decade. There's so
yeah,
much ahead of you. Yeah.
yes, exactly.
Okay, so you were diagnosed at 22, and
Hmm.
then you thought, I don't want to eat all this food, and so not all this bad food, but you just like your options were probably
Yeah.
limited. And so you were like,
Yeah.
hey, I want to make pumpkin bread that I can eat.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I found, very, very long story short, over a few years, started researching it on my own and kind of took matters into my own hands, to be quite honest, because all of my doctors were telling me that diet couldn't cure, cause, prevent any of it. And so when I started finding online that there were people that had used it, it was mostly just testimonials and things online, no actual studies. And so I started just digging in and found out that I really had to go paleo, which most people are kind of familiar with. Back then, that was like an unheard of word.
Yeah, I mean,
um,
I would say I would just become familiar with that word in the past like 3 or 4 years.
yeah, exactly. So it was very new. I mean, even gluten free at that time was still on kind of, just starting to become a little bit more prevalent, and people were just starting to become more aware of celiac. And so it was definitely kind of a scary time of just not really understanding and trying to learn the ins and outs of food. I mean, I just, until then, had just enjoyed food. It was like
Right.
put in front of me, it was like I ate it. I didn't really care necessarily where it came from or what it was made with. And so it was like learning how to read labels and going out to dinner and understanding that there could potentially be gluten in the salad dressing or in the soy sauce, like all those little hidden things.
Yeah.
So it really was a time of transition of just becoming kind of my own advocate and having to really pay attention to what I was eating because I noticed such a huge difference. And so essentially, in a nutshell, I had to cut out grains, dairy, beans, and anything processed. So
Which is that basically what paleo is?
yeah,
Okay.
that's pretty much exactly what paleo is. And at that time, again, it was like I didn't do it because it was paleo. I did a
Right.
whole series of kind of elimination diet, and that's just pretty much what it ended up looking like was paleo. And so from there, it just kind of started, growing. And now there's obviously a ton of books and blogs and people out there that are doing it. And it's just continually amazes me, honestly, how many people are being helped with it, which
That's
it's
my question that I have for you as well. So my mom has had celiac for like 25 years. She's
mm-hmm.
had it forever. And so she's been this gluten-free lifestyle for a long time. But just recently, I would say within the past like probably like 6 years has her options have opened. And
Oh
she
yeah.
loves to come visit us in Austin because nearly every restaurant in Austin
Oh my
has
gosh,
like a
yes.
gluten-free menu. It's amazing.
Austin is amazing for gluten-free and paleo. It's like it's
Yes.
incredible. I can't wait to get back there for if to like go and explore
Are
more
you
because
coming this year?
yeah,
Yay, I'll see you
yeah,
again.
yep, I'll be there.
And when this airs, actually, it'll be like in 2 days. So there you go.
There you go.
But my question for you is, do you feel this pressure, not pressure, because a lot of people would maybe like try what you're doing. Do you feel this pressure to like help people or have you taken that off yourself?
I would it's been a struggle, honestly, because when I first started my social media sites, like Facebook mostly, I just had no idea how big it would grow and all of the other ones now. And yeah, I do because I mean, I remember being kind of desperate and reaching out and emailing to different people that I found online just to try to, first of all, just hear you're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And to also hear, yes, you can enjoy food. And then all the little nuances of just like, what did you do? And how did you do it? And, how long did it take? And so I get thousands of emails and, thousands and thousands of comments daily. And for a while, it was a huge stressor for me, and I'd be up like late at night after my oldest would go to bed and be sitting on the couch just answering emails and questions for hours
Oh
on end.
gosh.
And it was too much for me. And autoimmune disease can actually really be fueled by the flare.
Stress.
Yes, by stress. And so it was one of those things where I really had to take a step back and just be like, I cannot save the world. That's not
Mm-hmm.
my doing.
Yeah.
And I can't, be there to answer every single question. But what I can do is I can put out as much material as possible on my blog and through my books that people can try to reference and go back to. And, so I don't run like a practice where I can visit with people one-on-one and give
Right.
tailored advice, as much as I would love to. And so, yeah, it is a little bit of a kind of stress point for me, but at the same time, it's so rewarding to hear people's stories. I mean, I just posted something today again about diet and just to go through quickly, I haven't had a chance to really read them, but to go through and read just the hundreds of comments of people that are, finding health, all different ailments, not
Yeah.
necessarily just what I have. And it's just so encouraging. And it's so, I mean, it just keeps me doing what I'm doing. I
So,
just
so
hear that.
Danielle, why do you think there's such this gap between the medical community and this? Or is there? Or am I just reading into that?
No, there totally is.
Okay.
Although it's getting better, honestly. And it depends where you live. I mean, I think definitely in the Midwest and southern states here in the US, I think it's a little bit lagging, but it's starting to get there. I think there's such a hesitance for some reason to look into diet, which I don't get. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
obviously there's all the conspiracies. I'm not going to
Right.
get into them, but because that'll spark huge debates. But yeah, I mean, I saw probably 6 or 7 different specialists in the Bay Area of top doctors, at some of the teaching hospitals, and none of them they won't suggest it. It's getting better. I've heard lately that the Cedars-Sinai Hospital down in LA, which is like one of the
Mm-hmm.
leading kind of teaching hospitals, they're starting to recommend my book, which is incredible. Some of the gastroenterologists, so specifically the doctors that deal with the intestine, but It's getting better, and I'm hearing it more and more. And that's what I would love to see, because ever since I've started this, I did work with a naturopath, but I also still saw my Western doctors.
Mm-hmm.
And those Western doctors saved my life quite a few times, because I had to have multiple blood transfusions. And, and then there's totally out of my autoimmune disease, but I had C-sections, with my sons,
Right.
and what would have happened if I couldn't have, so I have nothing against the Western, medical world. And I think that it's incredible in the advances that they've made with surgeries and medications and things like that. But I would love to see them point to diet, at least as a starting point, and it may not help everything, but there's so much I feel like that can be helped. And so much of the disease and the sickness and ailments that are happening in this country are inflammatory related. And there's so many foods that are inflammatory, and there's lots of things that people could be doing to reduce that, and to at least just be, kind of a healthier self before all of that happens. So I'm not really sure, that's a long answer for your question.
No,
But
I see. Yeah, but I can sense that as well. And my daughter was struggling with some stuff, and
yeah, I
we
remember you
went,
saying,
yeah, and we went, it was like all of this crazy stuff that I was like,
yeah,
this seems crazy, but I'm gonna do what you say.
oh, right.
Like, this is amazing. But this is weird. Like,
Yeah,
I would leave every appointment and text my husband, like, you're not gonna believe what just happened. It was
right.
the weirdest thing ever, but this is amazing.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
but it's just like, but I think it takes some embracing, because we're
Yeah, oh, yeah.
so used to the medical and the Western, the way that we do stuff, to then walk into an office of like a naturopath doctor and just
Yeah.
be like, okay, like this is hard for me to understand, but
Yes,
I'm listening because
definitely.
I see that this is working. So that's very difficult.
Yeah, no, it is. And it's a lot to take in, and it's a lot to learn. And, I think especially if you're dealing with some sort of a sickness, to have
Yeah.
to do a huge overhaul in your lifestyle at the same time of dealing with this sickness is
Yeah.
pretty overwhelming, So I think that that has something to do with it too. But yeah, I think I hear so frequently that it's just that there's no, studies, and who, there may not be the funds to perform those studies, but I have seen it over and over and over again,
Right.
just how many people have been helped. And so, my testimony and everybody's that has shared theirs with me is enough for me. So
Yeah.
for now,
So
I think eventually we'll get there, but
for sure. So what was one of the first things that you remember making that like you were so sad you couldn't eat, and then you found out that you could do it?
ooh, it's a great question. I would say probably my chocolate chip cookies, which are like the most
Oh.
popular recipe from my blog, which then they went into my book because they were so popular. But I remember kind of like doing a happy dance in the kitchen when I got it. And well, it's been a little less lately, but we used to have a lot of high school and college kids into our home like a couple times a week. And they would eat, anything that you put in front
For
of them.
sure.
And so when I served the cookies and I didn't tell them, that these
Uh-huh.
were grain free, and they all just like devoured them and were like, these are amazing. I was like, yes, I did it. Yeah,
Yay.
they flew under the radar. So that was probably the first thing that I was pretty excited about.
Is
And
there
then,
something that you're still trying to do that you haven't mastered yet?
ooh, is there something? There's a few things that are just I have just left because I think they're just better just left behind. um, I think trying to make a grain-free pasta,
It's
it's
hard.
yeah. So we do zucchini noodles or spaghetti squash, and honestly, it's healthier anyways. So I feel like there's no point in really trying to like recreate that, because it's just not going to have that exact same
You're
texture. And
right. It doesn't.
no, it doesn't. And somebody was also asking me about pizza crust the other day, and they were like, I've tried every, gluten-free, grain-free pizza crust, and I just can't find one that I love. And I was like, that's one that I will make it sometimes, but for the most part, I've just kind of let it go, because without the yeast and, combining with the gluten and the way that it makes everything so doughy and where you can pull it apart, and
Yeah.
it's just not that same texture that I remember. So I'm kind of almost would just prefer to leave it behind.
It's almost like there's some things that you just have to accept that it's not going to taste like what you
Yes.
want it to. Like we go eat, one of my favorite pizza places here is called Via 313. If you can get there
Uh-huh.
while you're here, because they do
Okay.
gluten and dairy free.
Okay.
But they're really some of the most amazing pizzas. And we always get one gluten free, and it is actually really, really good. But
Yeah.
you just have to go into it like, I'm not eating bread. Like,
Right.
I'm not eating what I would have normally remembered eating. So,
Totally.
yeah.
No, I mean, it's very similar to a lot of the stuff. I've been doing it now for so long that I don't necessarily miss it,
Yeah.
like the dairy-free ice cream and stuff that I make at home. It's now just become part of our standard diet. So
Yeah.
I don't compare it anymore, but yes, it is definitely a bit of a shift. And there's even, I mean, I've had some of the gluten-free crusts out as well, and those are pretty good. But the difference is a lot of those have quite a few things in it that I also cannot eat. If so, I'm completely grain-free.
There
So
you go.
there's kind of a difference, I mean, yeah, the gluten-free stuff can have cornstarch in it and potato starch.
For
And a lot
sure.
of
Yeah.
times they use gums and other things to kind of, bind them. And so, yeah, they've got a little bit more to play with than I do.
Would those be considered processed things, or is that
Yeah, they are.
okay?
So, and that's the thing with gluten-free. I mean, I know you're saying your mom is probably excited about all the different products, but I think the common trap that so many people fall into when they first go gluten-free, and I actually did it too, is they run to the grocery store and, anything that's labeled gluten-free, they just grab it because it's like, oh, I can have that. I can have that.
Right.
I actually remember like the first day when I first went gluten-free before I went grain-free, I went to the store and I got like donuts and pizza and I mean, just all the stuff that I normally probably wouldn't have eaten, but because it said gluten-free, I just felt this kind of sense of comfort. And so I grabbed it all, and I think I ended up eating worse than I did before I changed my diet because there are a lot of processed things in a lot of those products. And, I think it is great to have them on occasion, but I think that's a lot of the problem is some people that have been diagnosed with celiac or whatnot, they don't necessarily understand what's in it. And so they
Right.
grab it. And some people that have, I have a lot of people that follow my blog and have my books that have celiac that didn't find full healing from just going gluten-free. They had to go grain-free and kind of more on the paleo side because so many of those things in the gluten-free products were causing them problems.
Still causing them.
And there's a whole list of what they call like gluten cross
Uh-huh.
reactors. And
Uh-huh.
so there's quite a few of those ingredients too that kind of mimic the same symptoms as the gluten, and so people are still having some issues with some of those. So I mean, it's definitely a process, and I think I just tell everybody to try to watch their symptoms and really just do what works best for them. If you can tolerate certain things, great, and if you can't, then cut them out.
Yeah. Yeah. So if someone is listening and they're like, okay, I feel like I might have some symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should try this. And we're all going to be honest and say, this is really, really hard. And we
Yeah.
selfishly don't want to change anything because
Right.
we want to eat what we want to eat when we want to eat it. Like, no one can
Of
tell me
course.
what to do.
Yeah, of course.
What are your top 3 tips for someone that's like, hey, just start slow, see what you can do. This is not as hard as you think. Like, what are if you would look at a mom and be like, here's 3 ways that you can change this right now, just this
Yeah.
week, and see how it goes.
Well, I don't say to start slow, and
You say jump in?
I do because there's so
Okay,
many
yeah,
different.
tell me why.
Yeah, there's so many different things that could be causing symptoms. I mean, it depends what kind of symptoms we're talking about, obviously. I mean, everybody deals with all sorts of different
For
things.
sure.
But yeah, it's really hard when you go in slowly because I think it's a lot harder to commit to it. And,
Mm,
when you've had a piece of cake on Monday, then trying to commit on Wednesday is a lot harder because that cake is still so fresh on your palate.
yeah.
I think it's better to just give it 30 days. That's kind of what I've always said. It's give it, that 4 weeks. I think that's the best time to kind of fight the cravings that you're going to have. I think
Uh-huh.
it's the good amount of time to really try to gauge if something is improving. I also think that if you're dabbling and you're going in and out, because I did, by the way, and this is why I recommend this, it took me like 2 years, honestly, to really fully commit. Even after seeing some improvement, I would go back and forth. And if my husband was eating something, I'd be like, oh, I
Oh,
can have it
yeah,
just
just
tonight.
tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've all done that, no matter
Oh, yeah.
what you're doing.
I mean, I had everybody convinced around me that it was okay if I had it just tonight too.
Yeah,
It was
just
like,
tonight.
they're like, are you sure? And I'm like, oh yeah, totally.
Uh-huh.
It's okay. So,
Well, my
um,
thing is I can always find something to celebrate. I'm like,
yes,
oh, we should be so excited. You had such a great day at school.
totally.
Like,
Let's
let's
go get ice
celebrate.
cream.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I know. I'm the exact same way.
So do you think
Um,
that's why this the whole 30 thing
no, yeah.
works so well for people is because they're really jumping in, they're not taking it slow, and
Yep.
they're committing to 30 days.
Yeah, yeah. And the whole 30 is an amazing program anyways, just that it really teaches you kind of about the crutches that a lot of people have with food and, different kind of emotional aspects of it. And so theirs won't even allow my grain-free cookies. So I mean, this is like 30 days of hardcore
It
paleo is
is
kind of what
hardcore.
I
I
call
did
it.
Whole
Yeah.
30 last year.
Yeah, it's tough, but I think it is good. And I think it really makes you, I mean, even I'm doing one right now actually. And it even just really makes you realize a lot of the stuff that you're eating. I mean, especially because I'm nursing, it was like I was just
Oh
anything that
yeah.
was in front of me and anything that was quick, I was eating. I was eating some of those chocolate chip cookies like 4 or 5 a day. And so it just made me step back and be like, okay, I am not eating enough vegetables in my
Yeah.
daily meals. I am way too much, even though this is better for you baked goods, there's still treats. And so it was good for me even just to take a step back and really more just focus. And it hasn't been perfect, and I've had a few things here and there, but just that I'm looking at it a little bit in more detail of like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is what I'm eating during the day. So yeah, I think that that's a helpful thing, is just having this commitment, having a timeline of saying, okay, after 30 days, I'll reevaluate and I'll see kind of if things have worked. I would say the second tip is during that time is to keep a food journal, especially if you really are dealing with some specific symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a really long time to do it, honestly, because I was so overwhelmed. And my husband, Ryan, just kept saying, keep a food journal, keep a food journal. And I was like, I don't want to, it's too much. And I was like, I don't want to be, it's like keeping track of calories. I was like, I don't want to be
Yeah.
writing it all down. It's stressful and it's overwhelming and it kind of creates anxiety. But honestly, it was really great once I started doing it, because if I woke up one morning and my stomach hurt, or I got a migraine or whatever, it was like, oh, what did I eat last night? And I was able to start looking back through it and kind of see this correlation of, okay, I had this, this day, this day, this day, and within 12 hours, I was having the same symptom type of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is a little bit of work, but it's actually really a great tool, as simple as it is, to pinpointing. And then because, some people don't necessarily need to cut out everything. So you might cut out grains and dairy for the month, but then you may be able to add dairy back in. And I think the nice thing is when you're having that food journal is you can add kind of one food group back in at a time and really watch. And I say add something once a week. It's kind of like feeding a newborn,
I was thinking the
Yeah,
exact same thing. I'm like, I remember doing
yeah,
this.
yeah, because it takes that long sometimes for something to present itself, symptom wise, or for you just to notice a change. And so the thing I think too with that whole committing to 30-day thing is that it's going to be really hard to track if you're, adding in a bunch of stuff at once, or if you're one day eating this and not eating it the next day, and you're going to just kind of jumble it all together. So I think that's the easiest. And then, yeah, I would say it's really not as difficult as it seems. And it's not as limiting as it sounds. When you go through the list and say what you cut out, it does sound really limiting. But what I normally tell people and is what I can eat, so I can eat grass-fed and pasture-raised poultry and meats, and I can eat vegetables and fruits and seeds and nuts and berries, so I'm like, you really can eat a lot. And especially if you look through my books, you'll find that you really can, still enjoy a lot of food.
Oh, if you just follow you on Instagram, you're like, you're eating a lot of amazing stuff.
Yeah, I actually think I think I eat better because I focus on it a little bit more, and
Yeah.
it's important to me, and I really, try to play with textures and flavors and spices and herbs and just things to make it really exciting. And it also forced me to kind of venture out into different cuisines and
Yeah.
try, other food. And so, yeah, I would say don't let it overwhelm you. If you need to start slowly and just kind of have the same few things for the first few weeks just to make it easy. If you are going to commit, my Meals Made Simple, which is my second cookbook, I did 8 weeks of meal plans, and there's grocery lists in there as well.
Oh my gosh, that's like manna from heaven to moms. Like a meal plan and a grocery list?
Yeah.
Thank you, Jesus.
Yeah. So, and that's so not the way my brain works, honestly, because I'm the creative type and because I'm constantly thinking of something new in the kitchen. But I really, really sat down and tried really hard to do it and to use, not only to make a meal plan, but to also make it in the way that the things, that will spoil faster are used first, and that you're going to be able to use leftover stuff in other meals during the week. Just a lot of thought process to it that can be really overwhelming, for people when they're
Very
first switching.
overwhelming. Yeah.
Yeah. So that
Yeah.
would be a helpful tool too. And there's obviously a ton of different apps and websites that do that kind of stuff for you as well. So yeah, I mean, if that's not your specialty and you're not the organized type, and if you find that if you're not organized, you're going to go to the grocery store and buy a bunch of frozen pizzas and things like that, if because that's how I am. I'm like, if I go to the store without a plan, it is bad news.
Oh, I just start putting everything in the cart.
Yeah,
Because we
exactly.
might need it.
Yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
everything looks good and you're hungry and it sounds good and you're like, oh, I'm just going to get it all. So that was kind of, that's a lot of tips into one, but
That was good.
planning is definitely a huge thing for you as well. I just think it really helps to keep you kind of on the track and to not be derailed.
When I did Whole30 last year, I would say that I hated it, but it was really great. Like I think everyone says that, but I
Yeah.
did it and I really liked it. And but the one thing that came out of it for me, Danielle, is that a lot of my friends did Whole30 and they just didn't drink coffee because you can't put anything in it. And so they're like, I'm just not doing it.
Just not going to do it. Yeah.
But I just went like, I guess I just jumped in 2 feet and just did black coffee, which I've never drank black coffee before.
Yeah,
My coffee is like milky brown, you know? And I drink black coffee now. It's like what came out of it is that I don't need that sugar or cream in there anymore. And so I feel like a grown up when I'm like, oh, it's just black, you know, like I don't need all that stuff. But that's what happened for me is I don't put creamer in my coffee anymore.
See, it's those little things that you just didn't even realize that you, I think, are just so accustomed to doing. And that was the same for me when I did my first one. It was after I think I created my first book. And then when I started creating new recipes where I would normally add, you know, honey or whatever, it was like, oh, I really don't need that much. Or I can, you know, maybe leave it out completely. And it's interesting just the way that your kind of tastes are refined and you're more aware, I think, of what you're doing.
Yeah. Do you do all of your recipe experiments in your house or do you have like a test kitchen somewhere?
I just recently got a test kitchen, which has been a saving grace.
I'm sure on your family.
Yes, I was going to say for my family, for myself, for my marriage, my children. Yeah, it's been incredible. It's been amazing. No, so my first 2 books I actually wrote in our like 1,400 square foot apartment. Well, it was like a townhouse. I wrote them, cooked them in my kitchen, and photographed them in my living room. And that was my blog as well. So I'm currently writing my 3rd print cookbook, and it has been like night and day of the
experience. That is such a change for you because you can almost separate. Because I'm sure you had a hard time, especially because you're doing something that actually could provide something for your family, like a meal.
Yes. Yeah.
And so separating work from like I'm cooking for my family was so hard. I'm sure.
Yes, it definitely was. And I still do. I mean, pretty much everything I make, unless it's a massive failure, we still eat. Or if I've done like an entire day of dessert recipe testing, then, you know, it's not really dinner, but I bring it in from the test kitchen every night. I mean, that's what we eat. But it was just this big overlapping thing. And especially in my earlier days where I didn't know how to photograph, I would sometimes make my husband wait for dinner for like an hour and a half while I tried to get a good picture of it, which was like this massive point of contention in our marriage.
I can imagine.
He's like, I'm hungry. And then the food's cold and, you know, it was terrible. And I'd get so frustrated that I couldn't get a good picture of it. And so I started to wise up, and when my son was napping, I would make dinner and then I would take a picture of it while he was sleeping and I would just reheat it for dinner because that was like the only way to make things to save my relationship. But yes, it has been great, and I'm able to get so much more done. It was becoming too much and too much in the house. So it's been good.
You have a 5-year-old. How do you combat all of the like quote unquote, I'm using air quotes, bad foods with raising kids? So for example, like I feel like we don't drink like sodas. Okay. So we don't drink sodas. Yeah. And so it's hard for me when like my kids see other kids drinking sodas or other parents giving their kids sodas. I don't think they're bad parents. We just choose not to do that. How do you help that with your son?
We're just starting to get into that
because he's starting to notice.
Yeah. And you know, I mean, thankfully he has been raised for the most part this way. It was probably when he was about 2 that I kind of was like, oh, okay, if I'm, you know, eating this way, I should probably have him eating this way as well.
Yeah.
And so I shifted him over. And so really, I mean, he knows spaghetti squash and he knows zucchini noodles. Occasionally he knows like brown rice. He's, you know, has had brown rice noodles. He's not fully paleo or grain-free. He's gluten-free. But yeah, I sent him with different snacks at school and he takes his lunch. And I was worried at first when he started preschool that he would feel kind of left out. But he actually loved it. He was like, I get, you know, my mom's snacks that he's seen me make. And he kind of felt special about it. And he's funny because he'll turn down pretty much anything that's offered to him at school, which I somewhat feel bad about. But then also I'm like, good for you.
That's awesome.
But, you know, I definitely have noticed recently at birthday parties, because we've had quite a few for some kids in his class lately, that he almost was in tears the other day when I was suggesting that he didn't eat the cupcake or the cake because it was a regular, wheat flour one.
Uh-huh.
And so then when we left, I had a conversation with him in the car, and I was like, "Hey, bud, I let him have one because like he's not nearly as affected as I am."
Yeah.
And I was like, "So you know that gluten affects mommy's tummy, and we've noticed that it can make yours hurt, and it makes daddy's hurt. And I understand that you wanted to have that cupcake. So how about what if we bring you a cupcake to the party next time that's gluten free?"
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "Great!" Like he's like, "I get to pick my own flavor," and I was like, "Yeah,
Yeah, whatever.
So that to him is great. Now I don't know if that's going to be embarrassing or make him feel ostracized when he's like 9 or 10 and he's trying
Uh-huh.
to like fit in with the cool kids. But as of right now, that's the way we're doing it. So we'll see. I think I'm trying to just give him as much kind of information and as much as I can to just have him understand what the kind of food is that we eat and why we don't eat some of the
Yeah.
other, junk food. And then hopefully he'll make those decisions himself. And I'm sure he will go, with a friend or at some point, and he's probably going to totally binge on it all. And
Oh,
hopefully he'll come home and he'll throw up or something, and
that's
then I can
I
show him.
my daughter like totally I was like, I don't want to stress at this birthday
Yeah.
party because birthday parties are like, they're actually my least favorite thing to go to with her because I'm just like watching everything she's eating
Yeah.
and then she's not having fun and I'm like stressed out and it's just this whole big cycle that I hate.
Yeah.
And so this one time I was like, you know what? I'm gonna let it all go. Like I'm
Yeah.
just gonna let it go. And she threw up
Yeah.
like twice that night. And I was so happy. And I wasn't just happy that she threw up, but I was happy that she actually had like a connection in her brain where
Yes.
she was like, I did this and it
Yes.
resulted in this. And she still remembers that. Now, my 12-year-old told me on Sunday he had 7 donuts at church. So I'm failing majorly. But we don't ever buy donuts because I'm like, why would you
Right.
need a donut? It has no health value to you.
Right. Right.
But the backfire is that when they go to church, they eat
Yes.
7.
Yes. Yeah. So that is, and I'm trying to figure out what I'll do, and I'm sure my strategy will change, but that is one thing I've thought about is kind of letting them have it on occasion. And that's, when we go out to a movie or whatever, I'll let him
Yeah.
have something because I feel like I remember some of my friends growing up that were in the households that were like not allowed to have anything. And so as
Mm-hmm.
soon as they did go over to a friend's house, it was like, yeah, they had like 4
Yeah.
boxes of mac and cheese and they, I'm like,
Uh-huh.
so I do want to like allow him to at least taste things and have them occasionally. And then hopefully he'll make good decisions and, we'll see. So
That's what we can
that's
all
kind of where
hope,
we're at.
right? Is that
Yeah.
we like point them in the right way,
Yes.
and that when they're not around us, they make good decisions. Or if they make bad ones, then they have consequences,
Right.
and they're
Right.
puking for days.
Exactly. So yeah, hope for the puke. And then
Hope for the puke. Yes. All right, guys, before we get back to my conversation with Danielle, I wanted to tell you a little bit about this episode's sponsor, Audible. If you don't know, Audible is an incredible way to read with your ears. Look, guys, I'm a mom with 4 kids. I know a lot of you have kids too, and if you don't have kids, maybe you have this really high-maintenance dog named Sophie or something. The point is, carving out time for yourself to just read can be very difficult, but it doesn't have to be, because whether you're contending with your kids or your high-maintenance dog or just a really long commute or sitting at a baseball practice in your car just to get some alone time while your son practices, I might have done that before, Audible is the perfect antidote to help you get your reading fix in. You can choose from Audible's gigantic selection of audiobooks, and right now, the good people at Audible want to give you listeners of the Happy Hour a free 30-day trial. That's right, guys, 30 days for free. All you guys have to do is go to the link I've set up for you. It is audible.com/Jamie Ivey. Again, that's audible.com/Jamie Ivey. Go to that link and start your free trial and harmonize your reading life with your real life. So many of our guests that have been on the Happy Hour have books over at Audible. Guys, go check it out. Get those books in because you know what I always say, readers are leaders. Okay, anyhow, guys, audible.com/Jamie Ivey. Okay, guys, back to my conversation with Danielle. Okay, Danielle, I want to talk to you about something that you and your husband walked through, I guess almost 2 years ago. A year and a half ago was when your daughter passed away.
Yes.
So I don't really know a lot of your story, so this is going to be firsthand for me as well. But can you kind of tell me what happened in the summer of 2014?
Yeah, so I went to I was like 21 weeks, so I was a little late, but 'cause with your second
Yeah.
pregnancy, you just kind of throw it all out the
Oh
window.
yeah.
So I might
Just
have actually
wait.
been
My fourth kid's
22.
like don't even the tooth fairy doesn't even come anymore. Like it's just gone.
We had our first tooth fairy visit last night, actually.
Oh.
Yeah. We went to our 22 week. I think I was 22 for that whole big
Mm-hmm.
long appointment where you get everything scanned, and found out that she had it's skeletal dysplasia. So it ended up, after having to see quite a few specialists. Actually, it was misdiagnosed at first, but she had osteogenesis imperfecta, and so we carried her. Or I carried her. And she
I'm sorry,
was
had you ever heard of that before, that
no,
appointment?
no, never. We went in thinking everything would be fine. I mean,
For sure. I mean, everyone does, right?
yeah, exactly. She was diagnosed, and obviously, we were faced with the decision to terminate the pregnancy or to carry it to term. And at that point, really, there's no way to know whether it can be terminal, or they might be able to survive. And so we, after a long, long, long process, chose to carry her, and just to see kind of what the Lord would do, and hoping, obviously, the entire time for a miracle. But I gave birth to her early. I think I was, gosh, it's all kind of a blur. But anyhow, she lived for about 35 minutes and then passed away in my arms, but in the hospital room. Um, and it was confirmed after the fact that she did have type 2, which is a fatal case of it, that they can't live outside of the womb.
Okay. And that can't be confirmed until birth.
Right. Yeah. They can't. They can do lots of different tests. We flew down to LA to see like one of the top specialists in that kind of field, a perinatologist that really specialized in that genetic disease. And she, had a feeling, but they can't
Right.
confirm it without blood tests and then without x-rays, essentially,
Yeah.
as far as what we learned. So it's called brittle bone disease, which I think most people are more familiar with.
Yeah,
But
I have heard of that.
yeah, there's like 6 types. So the hard part is that there's only one type that's fatal. And there are, a lot of people that do live with it, that live full and healthy lives, and, that go on to be married and have children. And so it was just this kind of unknown for us, and was excruciating.
Yeah. So you went to that 22-week appointment. Was your husband with you?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Which is crazy. He actually he had a appendicitis like 3 days before my appointment, and he almost didn't come with me because he was still like barely able to get out of bed. And I was gonna have my mom go with me, and he ended up dragging himself out of bed like in his pajamas, barely
Which I'm
able
sure
to
you're so
stand.
grateful for.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, obviously, it was, he got out of bed for a reason, but it was, I was, very, very grateful that he was there with me for it.
Yeah. So the doctor tells you this news. I mean, and it's like the most devastating thing that you could hear, because you just go in thinking, I mean, was this like a time when you're going to find out the sex of your baby? Is that what this appointment? Yeah.
Well, no, we actually knew, because we went in early, because I'm like a total type A. I think we found out at like 14 weeks.
Okay. So you knew that you had this baby girl. And this was an ultrasound. And then can you just tell me, like, those next, 10 weeks or 12 weeks from when you found that out to when you actually gave birth?
Yeah.
Like, what were some of the, like, obviously there's a lot of obvious hard things, but what were some of those, like, things that we can't even imagine that you would have to walk through? Like, just me listening and our listeners, it's hard to understand the fact that you're pregnant, and that one of the highest possibilities is when you birth this baby is that they will not live. Like, how do you walk through those 10 weeks with that?
Oh. It was a process for us, and it went back and forth, honestly. I think my initial reaction was to try to disconnect. And it was, I think, just kind of that innate just thing of not wanting to be hurt, obviously.
Like self-protection.
Yeah. And it was just kind of trying not to think about it, and, trying not to, just not connect with her, and trying, kind of like purposely not wanting to talk to her, and not wanting to sit and feel her kicks, because it was like, the more I get connected, the harder it's going to be. And then as we started to go through that process, and kind of, I mean, honestly, weighing out the pros and cons, if you will, of what our decisions were. We just were like, okay, we don't know how long we're going to have with her. And so at this point, then the only thing we can do is just enjoy the time that we have. And that was a hard decision, but it was, whether she does get to live on earth with us or she doesn't, at least we want to have some sort of memories of her. And so we packed up the family and we took them to Disneyland, and I would sing worship songs to her every night and read and just, all those things, the things that you can do. We'd sit, and as hard as it was, we'd sit and my husband would feel her kick, and we just tried as hard as we could to take in every moment, because we just didn't know, what the outcome would be. And what I didn't want was to regret, if she did pass right away, to regret that I didn't get to experience my pregnancy with her, and that I didn't, get to bond with her, because that just felt unfair to her and unfair to me. And I knew that, while she would most likely not be here, I couldn't live the rest of my life with regrets, because then that would affect how I was as a mother to Asher and to any future kids I had. It would affect, what kind of a wife I was if I was constantly living with regrets of both, really, about whether or not I connected with her, and then also our decision to carry her to term. I just knew that I know the kind of person I am. And I knew that it would completely eat at me for the rest of my life if I did live with any regrets. And so I kind of had to just make this commitment of, okay, I need to do everything in my power to not have any regrets.
Yeah.
And that way I can be present, and I cannot be, filled with depression and sadness and wishing that things were different for the rest of my life, because that's not fair to the people that are here,
Yeah.
So that was kind of, it sounds really easy as I say it now, because I am a little farther out, and I've done a lot of writing about it for my blog and for different websites and things like that. And so it's a lot easier to say it now than it is, and that it actually was.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And that's, that's not just I'm not a courageous person who has all the faith in the world that just says like, I'm going to do this. It was so much back and forth. And still, honestly, I'm still processing. Who has become one of my good friends, who as well, is Angie Smith. And we actually met because of our daughters. I read her book when I was still pregnant. And we
Before
connected
you knew, or after?
After.
Okay.
After.
I read her book and sobbed on the treadmill. I was the crazy woman at the Y sobbing.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, it was, we announced my pregnancy to my whole, social media world, because that's what you do.
Yeah.
And
Right.
because I had a book coming out at the same time.
A lot of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. When you don't think anything is going to happen, it's just a safe thing to do. And so,
and your work is online a lot. So it's just kind of, it wasn't odd.
It's just kind of my whole life is, and so when we found out that she was diagnosed with this, we kind of went back and forth, and we're like, okay, do we say something? Do we just wait until we find out what happens? And then we just do a post of like, she passed away and there's no answers and there's going to be a lot of questions. And so we chose to just bring in my community and just let them know that she was diagnosed and that we had chosen to carry her. And through that, I got this incredible outpouring of support, and obviously some criticism as well, because what's the internet without criticism?
Exactly. I was going to say, surely.
Yeah, but just so many people writing in and telling me of their experiences, and just all sorts of things. And one of the things that I had so many people recommend her book. And I was not familiar with her or Todd at that point. And so I read it and sobbed. And, when you're saying,
are you glad that you read that?
I am.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Yeah. It was one of the hardest things in the world to read. And actually now that we've become such close friends and we talk more about our stories in depth with each other than really is out there for the public,
sure.
There are so many similarities to our stories, which is crazy because they're both very kind of rare occurrences.
Yeah.
But just everything. She and I think we're wired very similarly. We joke a lot that we could be like sisters, but our brains are very similar, which was helpful for me to have somebody to connect with on that level.
For
and
sure.
and honestly, the Lord was so good that I had already had probably 2 or 3 friends that had lost babies, that up until we had her diagnosis, I kind of was like, oh, it's so sad for them, but it's never going to happen to me kind of mentality. And I had this respect for them, and understood that they went through something, but I didn't know them when they were going through it. So that's also a bit different. It was kind of after the fact.
Yeah.
But it was just really incredible to have women that had experienced a similar loss, because honestly, a child loss is like none other. I mean, I've lost family and, have gone through obviously my disease, and, I've definitely been through my fair share of trials, but this was like nothing I could have ever imagined. And her book for me, because like I said, I am a type A and a planner, it was good for me, as hard as it was, but it was good for me to read all of those things that I didn't expect. So, I mean, without going into too much detail, because you should read her book. But I've also read about or written about my experiences, but just the things that you don't think about, like the having to hand your child over to the nurses, and say your final goodbyes. The birth process of not, of knowing that they're likely not going to make it. And even she had, young kids as well. And we had Asher, who was 3 at the time, and how to kind of handle that situation.
Yeah.
And, for me, it was encouraging to read her book and read about how she relied on her faith and on the Lord, but also really questioned it, and really went through periods of anger and, of doubt. And I think it's so hard sometimes when you hear people speak that just are like, I never doubted and I never was mad. And because it's, for me, I'm like, that's just not
You're real. Like, are you real?
Yeah. I'm like, and then it sets this kind of unachievable standard that you're like, oh, well, if I'm doubting, or if, I'm angry, and then I'm not doing the right thing. And so just that confirmation, like, this is okay. And then I know the one part that really stuck out the most to me was, when she wrote about having to go to the cemetery while she was still pregnant, or it might have been right after, I think, and pick out, a plot and pick out a gravestone. And that's stuff that I have never had to do for anybody. I still have, my parents alive. And so I've never, that was something that I don't think I would have ever even thought about. And it would have really hit me like from left field if I wouldn't have read it, honestly. And then it would have been one more thing that just like brought me down to my knees. And so it was good to just, even though obviously everybody's experience are different, it was just good to kind of know to expect a few things. And just to be like, okay, this is going to happen and this is going to happen. And, I may deal with it differently, but at least that I know that it's coming. And
it's like that with all kinds of things in our lives. Like when we look at someone and being like, okay, you've been before here, whether it would be cancer or losing a child or losing a husband, like to look at those people and be like, okay, I want to know your story and I want to hear your story because I don't know what this looks like. Like I've never done this before,
Right. Yeah, exactly. It is. I think community and having people that you can connect with is huge. I mean, some of my closest friends now are women who have lost babies, and whether they were friends from before or friends that I met afterwards, which it's just so heartbreaking how many women, and especially honestly, how many women of faith have lost babies. And, I mean, I know that it's kind of that similar thing of, my husband always says, like, when you're about to buy a car, you see that same car on the road like a billion times.
All of a sudden.
And so obviously I've put myself out there in my story. And so these people have come into my life for that reason. But it's just been incredible. And to be honest, I mean, some of the friends that we had from before we lost Ayla, we don't really connect with that much anymore. And it's not anything against them. And it's not, they didn't do anything wrong or anything like that. It just has been harder to have that deep connection and relationship with them since then, because we just really kind of focused on a very small group of people that we felt safe with. And I mean, it was a good year, honestly, that I didn't really want to see anybody. That there were like a couple safe people that I wanted to be around, and anybody else, either it was too many triggers or they just didn't get it, and it wasn't their fault that they didn't get it, but I just couldn't be around them because they didn't get it.
For sure.
And so, I mean, it's been, that book was amazing, and my relationship with her has been incredible. And we're still, we still see each other all the time now and have become really great friends, and a couple other women, along the way. And then even there's been a couple women that have been put into my life over the last year or so that have just experienced child loss now. And to look back and see the way that they came into my life and be like, oh my goodness, we had no idea back then that my story would even affect you.
Sure.
And now I've been able to, really be there for them. And so that's been pretty amazing as well. So
that's wonderful. I just know that there are people listening that have walked in this road in some form or fashion that are just nodding their head like, yes, I get it.
Totally.
Okay, so I always ask my guests 2 questions, but I have one more question for you before we get to the questions I always ask them. One more question to finish out this. Looking back on even the last 2 years or the first 6 months after your loss, what would you say was one of the best things that someone in your life did, and what was one of the, and I don't want to say worst, but one of the hardest things? Like as women, as we're looking around to support our friends who are grieving, what helped you the most and what wasn't actually help at all?
Oh gosh. There's so many.
I didn't even prep you for this one.
No, well, there's so many for that. There's a list that goes around online actually about grieving moms and like 10 things not to say to them. And I can nod my head to all of them. And it's well-meaning people, I would say some of the comments that people said that were trying to be helpful, like, oh, you're young, you can have more kids, or,
right. Mm-hmm.
Some even really close family members that were kind of, in not so many words, were like, when are you going to be okay? Or the pressure that I felt to attend baby showers or to, be happy for people that were in my life that were also expecting, and kind of the pressure. Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing is to not have expectations.
That's good. Yeah.
Because there's no right way to grieve, and there's no timeline, and everybody does it differently. And I think there's a lot of people that do want to know the answers, and I wanted to. I'm like, when am I going to be okay?
Yeah.
When am I going to be able to go through a day without crying? When am I going to, when will I be okay?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people put expectations on you of like, oh, it's been a couple months, you should be okay by now. Or even when I announced my pregnancy with Easton, it was actually a really hard day for me because I waited. I mean, we waited for like 3 months to announce it and made sure that, everything was okay. And also just because I kind of just wanted to be in it myself for a little while.
Yeah, for sure.
But I remember the comments were kind of hard of just, like hearing congratulations was kind of hard for me because I was still grieving. I was also rejoicing for this, but it was hard that everybody else seemed to have moved past Ayla and was kind of, moving on. So that was tough. But I would say that the best thing, honestly, is just to say, I'm sorry. Is there anything I can do for you? A hug. Don't try to have the answers. Don't try to say, oh, it's must be God's purpose for her, because I'm like, or like, oh, think about how many lives, she's going to touch now that she's up in heaven, or God needed her in heaven. Those types of things. I'm like, no, I don't want to hear that right now. Maybe that's the case, but all I want is for my little girl to be here with me. And, those things, as much as they're just trying to comfort you, they really hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember I read Mary Beth Chapman's book, and I can't think of the name of it right now. But she lost a child.
Right.
And she talked about and I'm sure that Angie mentioned this too, but Mary Beth talked about like just her thoughts of like going, why? Like, why does it have to be our family to do this? I don't care if I want my daughter back.
Yes.
Like, that's all I want.
Yes.
I don't care about anything else except for I want my daughter back. And it made me even realize, like, as someone who hasn't walked through that I'm sure that I will, the odds are pretty high that one of my friends will lose somebody.
Right.
May that be a husband or a mom or a friend or something. And it made me realize, just remember, like, whatever, like, truths about God's word that I do stand on and believe, those just they're not like the first thing that you throw out at someone, right? And so I think that really helped me as like, just be like, okay, be a friend to this person and really just sit and be like, this sucks.
Yeah.
This is like the worst thing ever.
Totally.
I hate
exactly
this.
What you need.
I hate that, yeah.
No, yeah, that's exactly what you need. It's really hard when scripture's thrown at you, or, when somebody else's story is thrown at you. But I can echo that sentiment. I've come to a place now where I can look at my disease and be grateful for it, because it's helped, so many
For
millions of
sure,
people.
for
And
sure.
so
Yeah.
I'm grateful for that. And I've, even gone so far to say like, I'm actually grateful that I have it because I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be doing this. And there is a redemptive piece to that. But with her and, it sounds terrible, but I'm like, help people in another way.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Why
give
that? Why
me give
this?
me my daughter and help them some other way,
Yeah.
use some other medium to do it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of that. I feel like that's kind of going to always be, my sentiment. And I think one other thing is, it's been what's been hard, and I've talked to quite a few moms that have had babies after loss, and that all agree is don't call the next baby a redemption, because
Mm,
that next baby's not payment for
right.
the one that I lost.
Mm-hmm.
It's an incredible gift and a miracle, but I don't see redemption for losing her on this side of heaven.
Right.
Because there's nothing that can make it worth it.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing that makes losing her worth it.
Yeah.
But I will see that obviously at some point. But
Yeah. Like Easton's not like this, like makeup for what
no,
happened. Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
not at all. And people, I think, assume that. Like, I even had one
Mm.
person that, more of a acquaintance, but was just like, "How are you doing?" After I announced that I was pregnant with Easton, and I was like, "Yeah, it's still hard." And she's like, "Oh, I didn't realize that it's still hard. I thought everything was okay now that you're pregnant again." And I'm like, "No, it's not."
You're
I
like, I
think,
still lost a child.
yeah, and it's not, it's not at their fault. It's just
Yeah.
I think a lot of people do see it as this, like, once you have another baby, then it just is all better. And yeah, there's nothing that changes. I mean, we still miss her every bit as much,
Mm-hmm.
and we still wish she was here every bit as much. And obviously now we want Easton here too. I want all of my
All of
kids.
them, all three of them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, thanks for sharing that. Thanks for being
yeah.
vulnerable about that. I'm sure that it's not an easy thing to talk about. So thank
No,
you for sharing that with me.
no, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Here's what I always ask my guests. I ask them
Yeah.
two things. Number one, what are you reading? And number two, what are three things that you're loving that you have to tell your girlfriends about? So you pick where you want to start.
Okay, so I'm a terrible reader. Awful, awful. Right now I'm currently reading my manuscript.
Well, that's like necessity.
I was going to say like a million times, so I really don't have time to read much else because we're going through editing. I was reading For the Love, Jen's book.
Yes.
I've gotten through like chapter 5 and then had to stop because I don't have any more brain power to read, and I
Right.
fall asleep every time I read it because I also have a 5-month-old that has made me sleep deprived.
Exactly.
So, and then I'm reading like parenting books because like sleep parenting
That's
books.
what we
I
do.
love
Yes.
yeah. So I mean, in terms of like light reading, that is actually something that will fill me up. I'm not doing much of
None.
that at the
Well, when
moment.
does your book come out? I didn't even ask you that. When's your
It
next
doesn't
book?
come out until September.
Okay.
Yeah.
September. Okay.
Yeah, September. So, and it's we haven't quite announced everything about it, but I can say that it's a celebrations book. So
You
there's,
know you want to say something right here on the happy hour that hasn't been said.
well,
I'm
that's what
like,
I'm saying. Nobody's heard that it's a celebrations kind of holiday book.
oh, I
There's,
love this. This is like breaking news.
yeah, it is breaking news just for you and your
Okay, so
listeners.
celebration holidays around
Yeah.
September. That's going to be awesome.
Mhm. Yeah, so that's it's pretty exciting. I'm actually very, very excited about
Oh,
this
that's
book. I
awesome.
think it's one of my best yet.
Yay.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are three things you're loving?
Oh gosh, 3 things that I'm loving. Sleep.
Sleep.
No, I think I'm like enjoying just the small things right now. I have really, for some reason, started liking tea at night, just
Oh,
like to
yeah.
relax me. I've really enjoyed my time of going to get a manicure. Usually it was
Yes.
like more of a thing where I just would go in and do it, and I hated it 'cause I needed to have them look nice or something. Now I'm just like, I'm going to take this 30 minutes and with no kids, and I am going to enjoy every second of it.
It's the small things for
It
real.
is.
Yeah.
It is. And chocolate, because I just always love chocolate.
Ah. Are you
Yeah.
do you drink a tea like a sleepy time tea or something?
Right now, I've actually been drinking the mother's milk tea because I'm
Oh,
trying to
yes.
pump extra. And so I
Mm-hmm.
actually, my first cup of it, I was like, I don't like this. It kind of tastes like licorice. But now it's kind of the soothing thing that I look forward to every night. So that's what I've been drinking lately. Otherwise, I'm typically like a mint tea type of a
Oh.
girl. But I've heard that can reduce milk
Milk.
production. I don't. Yeah, so I've given that one up. But
I don't drink tea that often, but one time I thought I was making my sleepy time tea and I was actually making smooth move. Have you ever
oh
taken that?
no, no. I'm guessing by the sound of it that it's like some
Yeah,
sort of a
it is. Uh-huh. And let me tell you, it's just if you drink smooth move tea at night, you need to not go anywhere in the
Oh
morning. Is all I have to
no.
say about that.
Oh no. Oh, that's terrible. When I first went off
Terrible.
coffee, I went onto tea and I thought that I was drinking like caffeinated black tea for the first month, but I ended up that I was drinking decaf for the whole first month.
Oh gosh, that you just
So
jumped in
I
2
did, I
feet.
did, but I guess my brain thought that I was because I just thought the box was
Yeah.
caffeinated. So I was
Uh-huh.
like, oh, this is good. It's giving me just enough, but so yeah, read those labels carefully.
That's exactly right. Okay. And tea. I had another guest that loves tea. I've actually had
Oh,
two other guests that love tea. That's so funny. I need to drink. I just like iced tea from Sonic.
yeah.
Unsweet
That was
iced tea
oh,
is
it's
what
not
I love.
sweet. I was gonna say, is that sweet tea
Oh no,
down
I
there?
don't drink sweet tea. Even though I live in Texas, which is the South, I've never liked sweet tea. It's too sweet for me.
Yeah, it's very sweet. I've only had it, I think, once, and it
It
was sweet.
kind of makes like you get that little thing behind your jaw where you're
Yes.
like, ugh, yeah.
Ooh. Yeah.
But some people
Yes,
love
and
it.
then you're tired for the rest of the
Exactly, exactly.
day.
Well, Danielle, I look forward to seeing you at DIF.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited. I went back and forth a billion times about going, honestly, because I've got so much going on, but I can't miss it.
I'm
So,
glad you're coming, and so
yeah,
I will
me
see you
too.
there. And thank you for coming on the happy hour.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So much fun. Okay, thanks. Guys, wasn't that just a fabulous chat with Danielle? I loved hearing about how she took matters into her own hands and she refused to let a diagnosis define her in a negative way. And her grace in the face of heartache with losing her daughter was so inspiring. Thank you so much, Danielle, for sharing your story with us. As usual, any books that we talked about on the happy hour, you're going to be able to find at jamieivey.com/happyhourbooks. Also, if there's any links that we listed, you're going to be able to find those over at jamieivey.com as well. I want to thank another one of our sponsors, Prep Dish. You guys are loving Prep Dish, and I just want to thank them because they're continuing to support the happy hour. Prep Dish is a healthy, subscription-based meal planning service. So every week, you're going to receive an email. It's going to contain a few things. It's going to contain a grocery list and instructions for prepping your meals ahead of time. So then, these meals are also healthy. Did I mention that? There's a paleo option, if that's what you're looking for. There's a gluten-free option. They can even be kind of fabricated to fit the Whole30 because I know a lot of you are doing that. What you're going to do is you're going to take about 2 to 3 hours in meal prep. You can do this on a Sunday after church. You can do this on a Monday after work. Whatever you want to do, 2 to 3 hours of meal prep. And then you have your meals ready to go for the rest of the week. And guys, I cannot tell you what a lifesaver this is. But not only is it a lifesaver, but they're giving you delicious meals. We're not talking like gluten-free mac and cheese here. We're talking smoky paprika chicken legs with roasted carrots, parsnips and fennel, or turkey and zucchini lasagna. Guys, those are good meals that they're helping you prepare for your family. Allison, who's the head of Prep Dish, and she's a chef, she's offering you listeners a special rate of $4 for the first month. Guys, you're basically going to get $1 a week to do your meal plans. You cannot beat that. Go to prepdish.com/happy hour. prepdish.com/happy hour. It's good for a $4 trial. So it's only $1 a meal plan. You got it. Thanks, Prep Dish. All right, guys, remember, I'd love to hear from you. Find me on my website, jamieivey.com. Find me on Instagram. It's at Jamie Ivey. Over on Twitter, I'm at Jamie_Ivey. Today's show is edited by Knox McCoy, and the music is from Jason Poe. Next week, my guest is Liz Bohannon. She's the founder of Seiko Designs, and we chatted about how she ended up in Uganda with nowhere to live and her time on one of my family's favorite TV shows, Shark Tank. Guys, I would be a mess if I didn't mention this to you guys. You guys did something amazing this week. I told y'all that we were going to have a live happy hour in my backyard with my husband cooking pork tacos, and you guys showed up and told me that you're really excited about this. I put tickets on sale Monday. 50 tickets gone in under 3 hours. So I thought I can have more of you at my house. And so on Tuesday at 7 a.m., more tickets. 50 tickets sold out in like 12 minutes. Guys, you guys are amazing, and you love the happy hour, and I love that you love the happy hour. So 100 of you are coming to my house to hang out with some of my friends and eat my food that my husband made. I'm so excited. Guys, I want you to tweet me. Use the hashtag #TheHappyHourLive and tell me where you're coming from. It's going to be a super fun party. Now, if you're listening and you're like, wah, wah, I missed out. No worries, guys. We're going to do this again, I promise. All right, friends, enjoy your week. Share the show with a girlfriend and have a happy hour with a friend. I'll see you next week with Liz Bohannon.